call me Dr. L, and I am a program chair here at Post, and I oversee several of the courses, many of the project-based learning courses. I oversee the concentrations of leadership, human resource management, supply chain management, as well as healthcare. So if you're any of those concentrations, those are the areas I oversee. I also oversee Business 515, which is one of the core courses that I know some of you are in. And we wanted to put this tonight to kind of help you as you get into these courses, and maybe it's your first or second, and to think about some of the things that you'll be facing and why we do the things we do and what kind of things that you can do to help as you go through this. And my hope is that you can see my PowerPoint here, and it says, how to be successful in a group. And that's what we're going to focus on in project-based learning tonight, is some things that you can do to help manage and lead and be successful in your group. And one of the things I want to stress is the why piece. Why do we work in groups in the MBA program? I've had students send me emails. A couple terms ago, I had a student send me an email and said, I saw that there's teamwork. I want to do all of them individually, and I'll be happy to do it. I'm extremely intelligent, and I don't want to be dumbed down by others. That was the actual email. And that may be very well true, that they feel like they are highly intelligent. But in organizations today, we have to work with all sort of people, and it's not necessarily individual. We're doing teamwork, and many times it's virtual, especially the world we live in today. And so it's an important skill set that employers are looking for. And so as you think about the why piece, tonight I'm going to kind of go through why this is an important opportunity, why we are doing the things we're doing, what different roles that you can take on in your team, how you can develop these skills that we call emotional quotient or emotional intelligence, which is something you likely learned or will learn in your different courses. Talk about the importance of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, which is a really important part of your learning and very important part of being successful in an organization today. And talking about the ability to negotiate, handle conflict, and really, we want to set you up for success. And we know that as soon as somebody hears team, there's anxiety. It can be very unsettling that your grade is going to depend on others, not only yourself. If you only had to worry about yourself, it'd be a lot easier. But we have done research and have worked with organizations that we have steering committees in our different programs, and especially here in the MBA, these steering committees are leaders, senior leaders in large organizations. And they have told us that the skill they're looking for, particular in MBA students, somebody who has MBA next to their name, they need to work well with others, and they need to be a good team member on a team and be able to work with people that could be not only across the state, across the country, and even across the world. And more companies will have international teams, and working in there is incredibly important. And so what we want you to think about is understand, we know it can be stressful and painful, but we also know it can be extremely rewarding. And we want you to think about taking this class as an opportunity to work on these skills. And it truly is an opportunity. And as I look at these opportunities, what do you gain from working as a team? We know that there's added stress. We know that not everybody will have the same standards as your own. We know that people are distracted, and some people will be more engaged than others. But we also know that you gain a great deal. And being able to tell in an interview that you've worked in many virtual teams, and maybe you've done it in your job, but also in your education, working with diverse groups and being successful, that's important to an employer. and being able to collaborate and listen to people that may have different views than your own, and being able to communicate. It's funny, I have this little cartoon on my desk, and it's with a senior leader, and on it, the cartoon, it says, well, I knew listening was important, but I thought it was the employees, not me. And that whole cartoon's the idea that we all have to listen, right? And we're not just going to be spouting out how we feel, but being able to listen to others and problem solve. We want the teams to work through their issues. You know, in extreme circumstances, we will get the instructor involved, but in 99% of the time, we will really push it on the team to resolve their own conflicts. If there's something significant like harassment and those kind of things, that's a much different story. But it's the fact that I don't like Joe, I don't like Mary, and so on. That's something that you're going to have to work with people that you don't like, and you have to be able to say, okay, I really don't like this person's personality. They handle things much differently than me, but how can I resolve this to be successful? And how do you build a great team? And what we find in his project-based learning classes is the teams that communicate most often in a variety of different ways tend to do the best performance in the course. And so please remember that you can use a lot of different methods to communicate with each other, but also never forget the importance of listening to the other people's opinion and not disregarding, because that's not your experience, that's not the way your job is, that's not your background. We like these project-based learning classes because you do get people with different experience. Some of you have worked in the corporate world for many years. Some of you have been in the military. Some of you may be just starting out. Some of you may just be going back into the job market and being off for a while. All those to me bring great thoughts and different views. We find the best ideas come from the most diverse teams. And so building a very strong team, appreciating differences. And also, one of the things we heard for many years, I've been an online instructor going on 15 years. One of the complaints that I've heard from online students is that they feel like they don't have the opportunity to network with others like they would if they were in seat. These opportunities to work within smaller groups, think about the relationships you're building, and it could be people in different companies, different states, and so on. You build this network where they could perhaps write a recommendation for you. They may be at a different level of position than you are, or be in an industry that you're interested in. So never forget the importance that building this network of peers that can help you as you look for career changes. And I can even recall for myself, and when I was working on my doctorate, I met a lot of people in education. I was working in a corporation. I wasn't in education, but I made these connections, and my first job in education, teaching, was based on a connection that I made on a team. So I think that you don't forget that benefit from it as you're going through here. The other piece of this is, and we find this often, is some students automatically want to take a certain role. And we encourage you to take different roles. And most of the project-based learning courses will have some sort of contract that the team amongst each other, and most of the time in project-based learning classes, the teams usually are somewhere around 4 to 6, with 5 being typical. We can have smaller teams. Sometimes we have smaller classes, but that's more the exception than the rule. I think we had a class that ran this last time with only 4 students in it, and we only had 1 team. But generally, we have multiple teams with a handful or so students on each team, and they communicate most of the communication in the course occurs through the group discussion board. Most of the project-based learning classes will not have a traditional discussion board where you're just responding to questions out of the textbook or something. We are really focused on a case. So as you're going through the entire course, you are focused on a case. And I'm so excited about that because some of the courses, when we started out, most of the courses were set up with a case from perhaps a textbook, or a lot of them were from the instructor, the person who designed the course, on their experience and things that they faced in a job. And that's how those cases were developed. But we are moving in a new direction, that we are taking real life cases from organizations. And I've been spending an enormous amount of time getting contacts, working with organizations, not only from the United States, but other countries. And many of them, depending on the course, will be looking for a marketing plan, a strategy, how to build effective teams. So if you're in Business 515, which is the effective organizations, that particular course, we have real life cases that we're working on. Not every course will have one, but we're building more and more and more of those. I think this last term we had 2 or 3, and I'm working really hard to double that number this time and triple it the next time to get more and more. But we're designing so most of ours will be real life. So you're really working with an actual CEO or entrepreneur that may know a lot about their particular skill. Like, for example, we have somebody that I'm working with right now that wants to has an art gallery and is expanding across international, and wants to build a structure, how to hire employees, and how to develop them and build a great team. And that's something that we'll take in a case and give her recommendations. So how we carry ourselves among each other will represent not only ourselves, but how Post University is evaluated, in the world by these leaders. And to me, this is a tremendous opportunity for students to get a real life experience, because in a project-based learning class, you are treated as a consultant, and the instructor's job is to be the leader of the consultants. And then you will either have a case or a real life scenario that you will be focused on. And so taking on different roles, where sometimes you're the leader, sometimes you might be the research finder, and taking those different roles. And we've had students that'll say, I only want the leader. I'm going to run everybody. I think it's important to say, you know what, I think in this particular class, I'm going to see what role I can take that might be a little different. So I learned different skills in it. And maybe we're going to set up the team where we all collaborate and there's not one person that's micromanaging us. How you set up your teams is up to you and the different roles, but you have a contract that you sign, and you have a chance to evaluate each other as you go through the class. Depending on the course, it'll be done a little differently. So we realize that this is exciting, but also uncomfortable in the sense that, wow, I'm still learning, but I'm going to be consulting too. But we feel like you really learn the material by applying it to the real world, and having this opportunity to develop those skills, to be able to network, to be able to not only network amongst each other, but you're the owner of this organization. If you're doing a real life scenario, will be able to see your skills as well. And so that'll be, really important as you go through this. I talked about in the beginning about the importance of emotional intelligence and developing your skills. I think one of the most important skills today is being able to get along with people that might be different than yourselves because of the background, their education, where they grew up, their age, ethnicity, all those kind of things make who we are. And a really important skill of a leader today, no matter what industry you're in, is what we call emotional intelligence. And there's been a lot of research on this, that emotional intelligence is more important for your overall success than your IQ. And the student that told me how smart they are, I bet you all of us know some really smart people that have not been very successful in their career because they don't necessarily get along well with others, whether they're impatient because they're highly intelligent, they treat people like they're not as smart as they are. All those things impede their ability to be successful. And so if you look at these skills that we have in a slide here about what makes up emotional intelligence, these are skills important in your team. And so thinking about how you might be coming across, how you might be being perceived by others, being open to feedback, looking at the fact that not only looking at the issue through your own eyes and experiences, but having understanding for others that may have a different viewpoint, and understanding and being patient. I think it's important to be patient with ourselves. Sometimes I'll get emails from students. I don't understand everything. It's like day one, and they're freaking out. And sometimes you got to be patient with yourself, but be patient with others as well, that it takes a little time to get used to the team. Some people might be intimidated, or I even remember many years ago, I won't date myself, but many years ago when I started my MBA, I thought to myself, boy, am I stupid. I'm the dumbest person in this class, because I was out for a long time. I graduated with my undergraduate, and I think it was a dozen years before I went for my master's. And I felt, oh, there's so much I don't know. I know my industry really well, but I don't have the same experiences. And realizing probably everybody in that group feels that way in some way, because the case that you might be working on has nothing to do with their background. Sometimes we'll have healthcare cases, and maybe you don't have healthcare background, but you still have this experience of what you're learning in a textbook, the work experience you have. Sometimes the greatest ideas come from folks that aren't in it every day, and they can take something from another industry and really make a difference. And these social skills, being able to, tell when somebody's frustrated and bring them back into the team, and not making someone feel alienated in some way, and respecting, the fact sometimes all of us as human beings will get an email or have issues. Sometimes we need to take a step back for a moment and not respond, when we have our emotions up a little bit, or we're frustrated with a particular situation. So, you know what, I'm not going to respond in a second. As soon as I take a little breather, I usually take my dog for a walk, and I come back and say, you know what, now I can respond. I took it wrong. Maybe that's not the way it was meant. And we have to be able to learn that, and being able to regulate ourselves and realize it may not be the right time to respond. But I think the important part is being engaged, being respectful, not saying, you know what, I'm too busy, I'm not going to be engaged in this group, and I'll let them do all the work. We don't have a lot of that in MBA classes, but occasionally we get somebody who doesn't understand how that peer review can affect them, or how they affect the entire team. And I think that that's a really important lesson, that you don't affect only yourself, but the other people in your group. The other thing I wanted to mention, as you think about, we've all heard of the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Maybe you haven't heard belonging, but DE&I is an important aspect in the world that we live in today. But belonging is probably even more important. And what I mean is, it's one thing to say that you're open to everybody, no matter what their background is. It's another thing to make them feel part of the team. It's another thing to make them feel that you're no better than they are, and that you respect their background, and you respect the differences, and you want them to feel part of the team. That's why I love Post University so much, because we do have a diverse group of folks in our program, whether we're talking about job experience and age, ethnicity, whatever the case is. That's so incredibly important. Somebody recently asked me in a conversation, Professor, can you tell me, is diversity really good for an organization? Is there any research that shows that organizations are any better when they're diverse, or is it just a feel-good thing? And my response always is, first of all, yes, there's very, very strong research that shows that companies that are diverse tend to have higher profitability, and they solve problems better and more effectively than organizations that don't. But the really important answer to this is we live in a diverse world. And if you're running a company and you can't figure it out, you're going to lose your employees, you're going to lose some great people because they're going to go somewhere else where they do feel like they belong. And so that's why it's so important today that you do make an individual feel part of the team and not somebody who is trying to fit in and not being accepted for who they are and what they bring to the team. And I think as an MBA, somebody who wants to be a leader and grow in an organization, having those skills and developing a culture of DE and I and the B, the belonging, will help with the serious retention issues that many organizations have. It's one thing to hire someone who's diverse. It's another thing to keep them and make them feel like they have a purpose in the organization and they are valued and greatly appreciated. So that's a skill that's really important as you look at the team, to look around your team and make everyone feel valued and appreciated and respected and listen and realize that their backgrounds may be very different and how they react to a situation may be different than the way you did. And I always ask the why. And anybody's ever had me as a professor will know I always like someone to ask the question, so what? And what I mean by that is anytime you come up with an idea or come up with some recommendations, what is the so what? What do you want somebody to walk away? What is the call to action? And so as you start to work on these cases and come up with solutions, what is the total learning that you're doing? And what are you walking away? And most of our classes have some sort of reflection as part of the project-based learning class. We want you to reflect. Some courses will have a video where you reflect on your experience working in a team. Others will have journals where you don't do a discussion board every week, but you have kind of a private journal that you kind of talk about your experiences with the professor as you go through the course and what you learn working on your team. And then lastly, you know, as we think about these skills, being able to negotiate, being able to realize that you can't always get your way, but being able to realize that you will have to negotiate solutions, that your recommendation, your idea may not be the first thing that the rest of the members think. You have to think about how do you communicate your ideas and realize, you know, how's your team going to make decisions? Are you going to go with a democracy? Is there going to be one leader who's going to make the final decision? Sometimes we'll have groups that they are a group of 5, but everybody kind of works as individuals and they have their own little part, but they don't communicate back and forth and say, well, you do this part, I do this part, you know, so on, and then we'll put the whole paper together. And so I believe that what's so important with this is realizing that you can't operate in a vacuum and you can't just say, I'll take my little area, because you have to think about all these different pieces, how they connect with each other. And you are going to have conflicts, but conflicts are not necessarily bad. I think conflicts can be very good in a lot of organizations. Obviously, if it's personal, obviously, if people lose better, you're screaming at each other, that's not what I'm talking about. But I am talking about a difference of opinion and respecting those differences and not to take it personal and realize that we're all trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to balance our lives, trying to do this. You all have a why. You're here in this program. And when we're done tonight, I'd like you to take a moment, just a moment to reflect on why are you here? Why are you in this MBA program? Why does this mean so much to you? Why are you taking these courses? And I'm sure sometimes you sit back and think, oh, look at my neighbor, look at my cousin. They're out having a good time. Look at they're playing with their kids. Look at this, look at that. I used to think about all those things. And then I had to think, like, I'm here for a reason to better my life, to have a better life balance in the long run, to be an example to my children, to be an example to my family. All those things, think about why you're here. And when you're in a conflict, think, you know what? Yes, this might be a tough situation, but I know I'm here for a reason, and I'm not going to let this tough team or this individual stop me from my dream. And some classes are going to be more difficult for you than others. That's natural. Some of you are, going to be strong in writing. Some of you are stronger in the math. Some of you are just a natural working with teams. Others going to be more of a struggle. But realize that you are growing and you're having this opportunity. That's why you're in this program, to develop these skills. You might have worked in lots of teams over the years, but now in the virtual teams and working with people that from different parts of the country and world. We have many students in different countries, and the funny thing is, they often tell us that they really like working with our American students because it gives them an opportunity to learn diversity. They don't want to work with students from just their particular culture. They really like working with people different themselves because they learn so much. And you have to be resilient, not only in these courses and working with teams, but to finish an MBA. I hope you realize this, that when you finish your undergraduate, about 40% of the U.S. population has an undergraduate degree. Do you realize only, depending which state you live in, somewhere around 8 to 10% has a master's degree? If it was easy, everybody would have one. And so there'll be times that will be difficult and challenging. And I don't know one person that didn't think, I don't know if this is worth it. This is just too much. I can remember myself, working on my doctorate, was going to quit, right at the end, because I was going through a lot of personal issues. Sometimes there could be sicknesses in your family, and it just seems too much. And I always say, go back, look at the why, and never forget why you were here. Now, maybe you need to take care of that issue so you can focus on your education, but never forget about it, because you're here for a reason and you are here to get this goal. And don't let just one tough situation end it for you. I was very close to ending it, and I was able to, with some encouragement from somebody, being able to continue on. And I'm so grateful every day that I was. But at the time, it's sometimes hard to remember how you felt. But when you're feeling all this pressure at work, family, sometimes even the people that you live with are not the most supportive. It can be very lonely, and sometimes building these networks of team students, they can give you a lot of empathy because they're facing the same thing. So the bottom line from all this is, there's a reason and purpose that we put these teams together. There's a reason that we have this requirement to work in teams, and it is a high percent of your grade, but it's such an incredibly important skill. And I have no doubt, as you go through these different courses, you're going to have wonderful experiences, and you're going to have some that you would not consider very positive. But when you look back at it, you can say, you know what, I learned the most from that challenging group. And and I was able to develop those skills. And the next time I go through this, whether at work or through my education, I will handle that situation differently. And that's really what we want to walk away with tonight. And so my hope is that you kind of look at this differently as you start your course. Some of you might be in your first or second course, but my sincere wishes for all of you is that you do have a positive experience, you see the value of your education, and you never forget the why. So I'm going to stop for a minute. Alan, do you have anything you want to add?
I don't know if I have anything particularly. I think you touched on so many of the important things that students need to know when you're entering into one of these classes. They're very different, but they can be very rewarding. I probably will say don't underestimate the impact of peer evaluations. That is something that your teammates do have a hand in, and how you're going to be perceived from a grading perspective. And so think about how you're contributing. Think about the way that you are interacting with your team and what you can provide. And it is something that's going to be counted. So just keep an eye on that. That's something that sometimes blindsides people. So there's a lot you can take away. Just keep your eyes and ears open and be ready for new things.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. And I do want to say that sometimes poor peer reviews are the way you handle conflict. People felt disrespected. Sometimes it's just not being engaged or just being a follower or not really contributing. I will say for the most part, we don't have a lot of peer reviews, poor peer reviews, but we do have some. But I will say the higher the students move up in the program and get into the 600 levels and towards the capstone, it becomes less and less because students are getting closer to the end. You're like, I can see the finish line, and I'm going to get through this. So I want you to think about that. I don't know if Alan, is there anybody else on that? I'm not sure if Ohini's here or anyone else that has any comments before I open it up.
No, the chat is empty, and no, I don't see Ohini. Emily wasn't going to be able to make it, so just you and I. No questions in the chat yet. So
I'm going to open it up to questions from the students tonight.
Hey, Dr. L. Rob, just curious, not specific towards working in teams virtually, but just in general, how do you recommend to somebody, or maybe even for yourself, when choosing a concentration for your MBA? What are your thoughts behind, maybe providing some advice on outside of just trying to figure things out? Like everybody's trying to figure out, like, oh, I don't know this stuff, but I know this stuff, but I don't want to go for a concentration that is just a mixture of a bunch of things and stuff. But what thought process do you go through choosing yourself or providing advice to others?
So that's a great question, Robert. Thank you for it. And I will say that just so you know, my bachelor's was in business and marketing. My master's was in human resources, and my PhD was in organizations. And I think I evolved, to be honest with you, in a sense that my major job in the corporate world was really all about marketing. But the more I got into my career, I realized it was all about people. And so whatever success that I've had in my life, I believe had nothing to do with my brain, really. It is all about my ability to get along. And so as I got on my master's degree, I was 12 years older, and I realized, those human resource skills are really going to be what's going to help me. I saw it then, I see it even more now. So I think you have to look at what your career and what your interest is. I like personally to make myself as diverse as I can and develop these different skills. So I look at where my career was going. I really wanted to have the most senior level in leadership and being able to work with people. And I found those human resource classes that I had were extremely helpful to me as I made hiring decisions, as I moved up further to the organization. And so I looked at what I needed to grow and what those skills and how that was going to help me. I would say after my second, third class, I realized I wanted my doctorate. It wasn't something I started out with, but it hit me hard that I wanted to be a lifelong learner. And I thought to myself, what do I want to teach? What's my passion? And that passion that I've always had in my life has been around diversity, around people. My life experiences have been around that. And so I thought, what am I really good at? And what do I really have a passion for? And so I would always tell you to move away from what employers necessary, like, oh, I just want to get the concentration that people want to get the best job possible. I am a person that believes you should go after what your passion is. Remember, it's only 3 courses, so it's not going to make or break you one way or another, but you might really find something that you love and you didn't realize it. I don't think there's a bad concentration, a bad decision. We have a lot of thought. I will say we have more popular concentrations than others. If you want a business and start your own business and that's been your dream and that's your passion, we have entrepreneurship. And project management's a very popular one because everything's a project in its own way, right? So, that's never going to limit you. Leadership is very popular because, maybe you do have a career right now, but you want those skills that will help you advance. And your career, that leadership's a good one. And I have to put a plug in for the human resource one because it's our newest one. I think it's going to be one of the most popular. No matter what your background is, human resources is in a great demand. It's a high paid job. And there's so many different ways you can go. You can go into compensation if you're a math person. You can go in labor relations if you're really good at handling conflict. You can go into the diversity part of it if that's really your passion. So it opens a lot of doors. But realize it is 3 courses, so it's not a make or break. But I think if you think about, hey, you know what, I've always been interested in this. I've had an opportunity. I want to see if this is a career path, and I find this interesting. So I would do a little research on it and follow your passion and realize I don't think there's a bad decision that you can make because some students are like, I don't want to ruin my career. I've never had somebody in an interview say, well, we love you. We really appreciate an MBA, but your concentration just threw you out the door. I've never heard of that. But I do hear students say, you know what, when I started taking those HR classes, or when I started taking those classes, I never realized the interest that I had in it, or even realized what that job was like. I thought it was a certain thing because that's the way it was in my company. But when I realized the opportunities that were out there, it opened up the door. Alan, you want to add anything to how I answered it?
I think you said a big part of it. I will say sometimes the advice of follow your passion freaks people out because of follow my passion. I guess that means I need to make a career out of watching horror movies and playing board games. I don't know. So I think sometimes passion can develop just from doing things for a long period of time and getting into an industry. So don't get too freaked out if that freaks you out. Honestly, this is an area where if you don't spend a lot of time talking to your advisor, come talk to your advisor. Talk to me, talk to Emily, talk to Brianna, any of the MBA advisors here. And maybe you don't know exactly what you want to do, but I bet we can probably narrow it down to 2 choices or 3 choices. We can try and put many of them have a corresponding core course that you have to take anyway. So we can throw you in that course and see how you think about that. Maybe you think you want project management until you take business 530 and suddenly you run screaming the other direction. It's okay, it happens. But there are ways we can kind of test the waters. There's questions that we can ask you. Sometimes it just comes out of conversation. And honestly, sometimes people just want to challenge themselves. I have students who they take a concentration in the stuff that they're not good at because they feel like they want to get better at it. It's a very personal thing, and people come at it from a lot of different angles. And that's probably not the most helpful advice, but I would say don't stress out about it too much. What Dr. Loughran says exactly right, that there's probably not a really wrong concentration. End of the day, you're still getting an MBA. In a lot of places, it's a terminal degree. It's the last thing you're ever going to need for that position in many, many organizations. So I think it's something you don't need an answer to right away, and that we can help walk you towards what makes the most sense for you.
And realize this, a lot of schools don't have concentrations, so just the word MBA gives you some credibility, because MBA is really taking a wide angle of the different aspects of business. And you're looking at the concentration says, yeah, I did take the wide angle of business, but I did focus a narrow on this subject area. That's the reason we offer it. But you will find some schools offer no concentrations. The MBA has credibility in the business world, probably one of the most credible master's degrees in terms of very recognizable out there as you are marketing yourself. Did I answer your question? Probably in a very long-winded way, so I apologize.
No, I appreciate the dialogue. It's always one of those things that I question myself about, because I mapped out my degree, and I'm looking forward to possibly completing my career path with it by next year. And I kind of slapped the table on project management, but I get excited when I look at all the different courses. I'm like, can I choose a couple more, to add on to it? And I just get excited about learning, just like what you said, just trying to build my own toolkit with all this knowledge and experience and stuff. So no, just from your standpoint, you answered a great deal, and I do appreciate it. Thank you.
And the only thing I'll add to it is I have never regretted my degrees in my entire life. And I don't think I've ever met anybody in the MBA program that I've ever worked with that said I regret my degree. I have people say this has been a rough time. I'm going through a rough time at home. I have a divorce. I mean, there's been tough situations people have faced, but the degree itself sometimes has been the savior for them, that they've been able to gain confidence. I always like to tell a story. In the capstone course, we had this woman who was a wonderful student. She gave her final presentation. She broke down with tears afterwards. I didn't know what happened, because she did a great job. I said, "Are you okay?" She goes, "I never thought I was going to make it. I went through a divorce. My husband told me I wasn't smart enough. You guys able to hear me, or did I lose you?"
Oh, I'm good now. Something had happened. I lost you for a second, but I can hear you now.
You're back.
Did you hear my story about the student?
I lost you at when you started to ask her what was going on, because she did know.
Yeah, and she said she went through a divorce, never believed that she was going to accomplish this, lost confidence in herself. Her husband said she wasn't smart enough. And as she went through this, it hit her all at the end that she accomplished something very few people did. And she came back to me later and said, I was promoted. And it's not because of the education necessarily. It's the way I thought about myself. And people viewed me differently because I viewed myself differently, because I accomplished something I didn't believe I could. So I think that's a really important part of education, is how we think about ourselves.
Okay.
I just want to throw one last thing back there. Yeah, before we move on to other questions, but I'll throw a plug out there. If you are looking at different concentrations, many of our concentrations also have a graduate certificate that is 4 courses, some of which you may do throughout the MBA. Some of the people here are not MBA students, but certificate students, so they may have gone through that. They're doing the certificate first. But if you finish your MBA and you're thinking about, I'm in project management, but marketing really sounds interesting. We've got finance really seems like it'd be useful. We've got finance. There are those certificate options for you towards your stay in school even long. That may be something that's worth pursuing when you get there.
Okay. Yeah. Is the learning environment different than doing traditional college courses versus certificates? Or I'm just new to certificates, so I'm not really sure what to expect.
Same courses. They're all part of the business program. Again, some of the folks in here tonight are CERT students, and that's because the classes that they are taking are the same classes that the MBA students are taking. So no, it would essentially just be a couple of extra courses after the end of your MBA.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other
So, yeah.
questions that I can answer? Or Alan?
I can take
Anything about project-based learning or about the degree? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. I was just mentioning, I think you have to mute yourself or something because we're echoing. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you
There we
great.
go. Yeah.
Oh, so yeah, so I was relating to that story that you were saying about the woman that was very emotional when she graduated. You know, one of the things that and Alan knows this because I've been in communication with him, but when I got my bachelor's in business management, I actually got the Dennis O'Connor Special Recognition Award because I completed that course in the most adverse conditions. Like I really had, I mean, I'm gonna full disclosure, it took me 7 years to get my bachelor's degree because I had to keep, dropping off and the emotional roller coaster and all that stuff that comes on. And one of the things that I wanted to do was move into the MBA program. And when I looked at the curriculum, it really like freaked me out to the point where it froze me. And I was like, there's no way I can do an MBA. I talked myself out of it. Then, I had never heard of project management. And I got this job as a project manager, based on my experience throughout the years. And then, I learned about this graduate certificate. And also the master's in project management. So, with Post University, I was able to get the opportunity to start out with a graduate certificate and not jump in right into a huge master's degree, where it was going to overwhelm me. But even though it has been challenging for me, and I'm not going to say it hasn't been, it has been challenging for me because of life circumstances. I do, my initial plan was to move from the graduate certificate and then move those credits into the master's in project management. Because now, I can see that working as a project manager, I can see that that's something I love doing. But my question to you is this, what would you say to me, for example, on pursuing the master's in project management, or, like even continuing on with this graduate certificate when I'm so afraid of the content? It's almost like I'm like frozen in time in a sense, because I look at the content and I'm like, can I, especially like my next course coming up, I'm wondering, am I even going to be able to comprehend this? Am I even going to be able to do this? And even though it's a passion of mine, yes, I do want to do this, I have that feeling that I won't be able to. And and I think that's kind of what's keeping me at bay right now with the decision making. So what would you say to me in that sense to, I don't know, kind of.
Sure. I'll start out, Neil, and you can jump in. But I'll say, have you ever felt this way before in a course that you just felt like I didn't think I could do it? Have you ever had that feeling before? And think about, you did do it, right? You did do it. You were able to do it, and so realize it. Sometimes we can be our worst critic. We can be very tough on ourselves. And we also remember those things that happened years ago that somebody told us that we couldn't. It could have been our third grade teacher, and said, you don't do math. You can't do math. I still have some of those things in the back of my mind, but now it motivates me and makes me work harder. And sometimes I want to say, look at me now, Mr. Third grade teacher. And you said, and I think it keeps me really motivated, angry, but in a positive way, that sometimes people treat kids in a way that keeps them down. I don't know why as children and teenagers, these things are hard for us to move on because we still remember those things. And we don't give ourselves credit for the accomplishments that you have. You have a bachelor's degree. You showed that you can do this. And a master's degree will give you even more confidence. Yes, you're going to have some tough courses, but you made it through the last one. I always say, getting an education is like eating an elephant. If I told you how to eat an elephant, how are you going to do it? One bite at a time. That's how you're going to do the classes. And you're going to have some that you hate, you never hope to see again. And you're going to have other ones like, I'm so happy that I went back from my school because I never even knew about this stuff. And it's made me more effective in my job and given me a skill that I know can work not only for my current employer, but for my next one. And so, when I hired people, I always put the master's people up front. I'm not certain that's fair, but I always did, because I'm like, well, I'm not saying to the best mom, I'm going to at least rule them out, because they showed me that they were able to go accomplish something a lot of people can't. And so I always did that first. And I'm not saying they always got the job, but they got the first crack at it. So I think that's something to think about yourself and realize you made it this far, not to be so hard on yourself, even though it may be challenging. I hope that helps you. Anything you want to add, Alan?
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just say communication is one of the strongest tools that you have, and it's one of the best things you can do when you're feeling that kind of way. There's a reason that you have an advisor. There's a reason that we have teachers and not robots. We have there's a lot of resources that are here to help, and they are honestly things you're already paying for. So I am a big believer in, you're not always going to be able to get, let me back up. I got ahead of myself. But there's a lot of different ways that we can help you, but we can't help you if we don't know. And, one of the things that me as your ASC is good for is, I'm a good person for you to yell at. I'm a good person for you to talk to and just bounce ideas. I'm a good person for you to, to huff and puff and freak out a little. Sometimes you just kind of need to get it out. I'm good for that. Sometimes if you're having actual content issues, then we do have the Center for Academic Success is located on campus, but works with all of our online population. They have people who've gone through our MBA program. They know the content, they know the courses, they know what kinds of questions our students are going to come with. You can set an appointment with them and you can hook up with somebody there who can help you through those things. We have Tutor Me, which is a third-party service, but they're 24/7 online chat-based tutoring. So if it's 2 in the morning and you're completely lost in something, you can go look up Tutor Me. They're going to connect you with somebody who knows this stuff, and they can help walk you through it. They're not going to give you the answers, but they're going to help. They're going to help get you where you need to go. They even have like a little virtual whiteboard. So if you're in financial tools or quantitative analysis or something mathy, they'll be able to work through that with you. And your professors are subject matter experts. We don't hire any geek off the street. It's got to be somebody who knows how to do this and is going to be able to sit with students and work with students. And they've all got different demeanors and they've all got different, different quirks and foibles. But I don't know a single one who isn't willing to bend over backwards to somebody who comes to them asking for help. I've seen it again and again and again. And if you're feeling like this is going to be a struggle for me and you know that in week 1, start asking for help in week 1. Don't wait till week 7.
You're right.
So for me, it's all about communication. I think the 2 best tools that I see successful students, I've been an advisor with Post for 10 years. And the 2 most successful tools I've seen for any online student is communication and time management. And that's really what it all kind of boils down to, is letting us know that you need help, and then being able to fit that into your life. And we can't help with all of it, but we can help with a lot. So don't ever hesitate to speak up if you're feeling that way.
That's great. Thank you both so much. Yeah. Appreciate that.
And I will just say that for me, the reason I teach where I do and how I do is because I love adult learners. I love people that are, working to change their lives. They have family, have kids. And I'm not saying the traditional students, I've never taught them. I've always been the adult guy because I relate to that. I went back older and I just feel like it's a whole different ballgame. And I just remember when I was a traditional student in my 20s, the things I worried about, I didn't have time to worry about as an adult. So, I could daydream when I was in my early 20s. I had no time to daydream, and I was more productive and got better grades in my master's. So I think maturity and focus. So I hope that helps you. I don't mean to preach to you, but you're not alone. Most students, especially as you get older, you think, gosh, do I have the skills? Do I have everything? People know more about technology than I do, but that's how you learn. And so I think staying humble, but also confident and realizing you've been successful. So thank you for the question. Any other questions? I know we're running out of time, but I want to make sure that we set you up for success.
Yeah, and especially if there's anything about the PBL courses, the project-based learning courses particularly, said this is a great opportunity to ask those questions or voice those concerns. As Dr. Loughran is absolutely happy to talk about it.
Well, thank you so much for attending tonight. It means a lot to us that you took this time, and I wish you the very best in your education. And I realize you're giving a lot up to be here, but I will say when it's all said and done, it'll be worth it. You just may not realize it now. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, everybody. Have a good evening.
Nice to meet all of you.